Well, he's right about that, about all of it, including Walsh being retarded. The day before Thanksgiving, as you've seen by now, 2 National Guard soldiers were shot in the streets of Washington, D.C. One of those soldiers is now dead. The other is fighting for his life. In addition to the ambush in Fairfax, this is just the latest act of terrorism by Afghans living in this country over the past year.
In this explosive segment, Matt Walsh goes apeshit while defending Donald Trump's immigration agenda, pushing the idea of mass denaturalization as a solution to immigrant crime and fraud. We're diving into Trump's shocking plan, mass denaturalization to deport lying immigrants. Walsh spends the entire video hammering the idea that immigrants, specifically Afghan and Somalis, are undermining America. Whether you agree or not, he's playing for keeps. And Trump comes out of this looking like the only guy willing to wield a sledgehammer while everyone else uses a spoon. This breakdown will call out the rhetoric, the exaggerations, the selective outrage, and the blatant contradictions Walsh leans on. Buckle up. This isn't subtle. Now, let's find the real truth.
But it's far from the only one. We can't forget about the Election Day terror plot in Oklahoma, another planned attack in Texas that was foiled just the other day as well. Watch.
Well, right here is the nearly 30 pages of federal court documents. In them, prosecutors lay out a timeline of the 2 suspects' actions, how they supported ISIS, and a planned Election Day terrorist attack on U.S. soil. On October 7th, Tahedi and the juvenile met with an FBI asset in rural Oklahoma to try and purchase 2 AK-47 assault rifles, 10 magazines, and 500 rounds of ammunition. That's where the 2 were arrested.
They've always been a little strange.
While Tahedi lived in Oklahoma City, neighbors in Moore, where the juvenile suspect lived with his father, mother, and 5 siblings, say the family had never been friendly.
They've always been weird, but it's never been like, call the police.
Walsh opens with full-blown outrage. 2 National Guard soldiers shot by Afghan nationals, and immediately uses it as justification for Trump's new policies on immigration. He doesn't present nuance, he presents a narrative. Violence equals justification for mass policy overload. It's emotionally effective, but emotionally cheap. This is Walsh's first classic play. Link isolated tragedies to an entire population. He doesn't even pretend to separate individual crimes from millions of immigrants. This is the fear level. Pull it hard enough and policy becomes vengeance, not governance.
DHS is confirming that an Afghan national was arrested Tuesday after posting a video of himself on TikTok indicating he was building a bomb with an intended target of the Fort Worth area. Mohammed Dawood Al-Okazai is charged at the state level with making a terroristic threat. According to DHS, listen to this. He came to the United States as part of Operation Allies Welcome. So here you have it. This happened Tuesday.
So if you're keeping track at home, which you should be, this is multiple terror attacks or planned attacks by Afghan quote-unquote refugees in the span of 1 year. Now, it's clear that all these terror plots and attacks, particularly the attack on the National Guard soldiers in Washington, have led to a major shift in Donald Trump's priorities on immigration. And we're not just talking about a shift on immigration involving Afghanistan. We're talking about a shift involving other third world countries as well, including Somalia, one of the world's top exporters of dysfunction and violence and fraud to the United States. On Thanksgiving Day, Trump posted a lengthy message that read, in part, quote, "This refugee burden is the leading cause of social dysfunction in America. Hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. The seriously retarded governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing. I will permanently pause immigration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover, terminate all the millions of Biden illegal admissions, and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the U.S. or is incapable of loving our country, end all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country, denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who is a public charge, security risk, or non-compatible with Western civilization. Only reverse migration can fully cure this situation." Now, in case there was any doubt about whether Trump himself wrote this tweet, although I think it's pretty clear, he was asked about it several times, and in every case, he doubled down on the language. And it was very evident that on a personal level, he's furious, and rightfully so. Watch.
Just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration?
Because they let them in. Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in.
In that same post, you mentioned Tim Walsh, and you about what many Americans do find an offensive word, retarded. Do you stand by that claim and calling Tim Walsh retarded?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with it. Absolutely, sure.
But you don't think
You have a problem with it? You know what? I think there's something wrong with it. Anybody that would do what he did, anybody that would allow those people into his state and pay billions of dollars out to Somalia. We give billions of dollars to Somalia. It's not even a country because it doesn't function like a country. It's got a name, but it doesn't function like a country. Yeah, there's something wrong with Walsh.
When Walsh discusses Trump calling Minnesota's governor retarded, he acts like it's a patriotic honesty instead of a childish insult. Walsh loves framing Trump's bluntness as courage, even when it's rude, wrapped up in nationalism. He wants viewers to believe harsh language equals moral clarity. This is Walsh's mask-off moment. Anything Trump says is automatically correct, not because it's true, but because it's Trump. The argument isn't about immigration anymore. It's about loyalty to a persona. Facts are optional. Emotional alliance is mandatory.
Well, he's right about that, about all of it, including Walsh being retarded. But this is the president's chance to reverse the trajectory that the Republican Party is on. If he actually delivers on what he's promising to do, if in addition to stopping migration from the third world, he begins denaturalizing foreigners who have lied their way into the country, then the lives of millions of Americans will be clearly, markedly improved in every way. And therefore, millions of Americans will have a reason to vote for Republicans in next year's elections, which at the moment, they don't really have. So how would mass denaturalization work exactly? So the first thing you need to know about denaturalizing a foreign national is that in recent history, it's been extremely rare. During Trump's first term, only around 168 denaturalization cases were filed in federal courts. During Biden's term, the number was even lower at just 64. But it doesn't mean that mass denaturalization has never happened before. By some estimates, during the Great Depression, the United States constructively denaturalized, as they put it at the time, meaning kicked out of the country, more than 1 million American citizens, most of whom were born to first-generation Mexican immigrants. So no process was followed for the most part. No legal scholar, quote unquote, will defend any of that. But as a factual matter, it did happen. They had to go back to Mexico at a time of extreme crisis in this country where jobs were scarce. People with genuine ties to this country, Americans born to American citizens, forcibly removed people without those ties. Now, what's changed since the Great Depression is that through a series of laws and court cases, the process of denaturalization has become very well defined and much more challenging for the government to actually implement. Essentially, the government has to demonstrate that the naturalized citizen had lied in some significant way during his application for citizenship. And there are other ways too, like showing the citizen has joined the Communist Party or a terror group, but that's the main one. So this is a high standard, but it's not insurmountable at all. We can certainly find more than 168 Somalis in Minnesota alone who would qualify easily under this standard. These are foreigners who, as part of their citizenship application, pledged loyalty to the United States and only the United States. They also certified that they were not involved in fraudulent marriages or anything like that. And very often, these Somalis were lying. Here's Joseph Edlow, the director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and here's what he has to say about it. Watch.
Since September 19th, officers from our Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate, working in teams, have conducted over 1,000 site visits across the Minneapolis-St. Paul area as part of this operation. What they found should shock all of America. Focusing on a list of over 1,000 target cases involving more than 900 individuals, our officers encountered blatant marriage fraud, visa overstays, people claiming to work at businesses that can't be found, forged documents, abuse of the H-1B visa system, abuse of the F-1 visas, and many other discrepancies. Over the course of the operation, our officers found indication of fraud, non-compliance, or public safety and national security concerns in nearly a little less than 50% of the cases interviewed. You're aware of the CHNV, the parole programs that the previous administration was involved in, bringing people in. People here were allowed to sponsor individuals to come in from certain countries. As I said, we found organizations here that were involved in sponsoring many, many individuals. They did not know necessarily the individuals they were sponsoring. They were doing almost a blanket sponsorship. That is fraud. That's something that should have been caught.
Walsh tries to give intellectual weight to Trump's plan, digging up old precedents, cherry-picking immigration law, and pretending systematic fraud is a proven fact. He glosses over the real constitutional nightmare here. Revoking citizenship based on past paperwork errors is a Pandora's box no sane legal system once opened. Walsh's rhetoric turns rare, extreme cases into universal truth. He doesn't just want criminals deported, he wants anyone who fails his cultural tests expelled. That's not policy, that's ideology weaponized. Here's the sleight of hand. Walsh takes bureaucratic sloppiness and stretches it into a civilization conspiracy. He's not fixing a system, he's selling a purge.
It's something that I know the previous administration was aware of how the sponsorships were happening, and no action was taken. I'm glad to see that we're taking action.
So this rampant fraud, we can assume, is one reason why the Trump DOJ in June of this year issued a memo stating that the Civil Rights Division should prioritize, quote, the denaturalization of naturalized U.S. citizens. The administration is aware of the extent of the problem, and now it's time to do something about it. And we need to go way, way beyond the easy cases where there's forged documentation or fake marriages. Obviously, they should be kicked out of the country, but it needs to go beyond that. And here's one way to go about that. Let's say a Somali comes to this country, becomes a naturalized citizen, and immediately begins defrauding us. Maybe they go to Medicaid and file a fraudulent autism claim for their child, which is something that virtually every Somali seems to do, which is why, as we discussed last week, Medicaid claims for autism in Minnesota grew from $3 million in 2018 to $400 million in 2023, 5 years later. It's all fake. Now, in this case, the Somali should lose his citizenship. He clearly came to this country to rob us. He lied on his immigration form, assuming he didn't tell us that when he came. Hey, why did you come to the country? Well, I came to rob you. We're going to assume he didn't say that. So he lied. He lied to immigration officers, and therefore he has forfeited his right to live in this country. You know, imagine if you invite a house guest over, someone who you just met at work or something. He tells you he's, really happy to be here, looking forward to dinner. And then when he's gone, you realize that he's stolen your wallet and your television and your computer and your couch, hauled them all away in a U-Haul truck, driven by his friends while you were in the bathroom or something. Now, in that case, you'd obviously conclude that, in fact, this house guest was lying about looking forward to dinner. He was lying about being your friend. And it goes without saying that you would never let him back in your house ever again. I mean, that's common sense. It's so obvious it doesn't need any explanation. Our immigration policy needs to work the same way. And once these Somalis are deported, government officials in Minnesota, they need to go to prison. Here's an extraordinary message that was posted over the weekend from a social media account claiming to represent over 480 current staff of the Minnesota Department of Human Services. And here's what they wrote, quote, Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud, but no, we got the exact opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of partnership, we got the full weight of retaliation by Tim Walz, certain DFL members, and an indifferent mainstream media. In addition to retaliating against whistleblowers, Tim Walz disempowered the Office of the Legislative Auditor, allowing agencies to disregard their audit findings and guidance. As staff, we firsthand witnessed and observed fraud happening, yet were shut down, reassigned, and told to keep quiet. Sometimes more. Leadership did not want to appear to discriminate against certain communities and were unwilling to take action, such as stopping fraud, that would have an adverse impact on their image. Now, to be clear about this, by all accounts, this post appears to be genuine. And in a second, we'll get into reasons why it appears to be genuine. But at the same time, it needs to be said that even if nothing in this post is true, Tim Walz should still be put on trial. It's beyond dispute at this point that he allowed massive fraud to take place. We know that. The only question is whether he deliberately allowed it or whether he's so criminally incompetent that somehow he didn't notice that hundreds of millions of dollars were being stolen from the taxpayers every year. Well, neither option is good for Tim Walz. And the truth, as that post states, does appear to be that as a matter of state policy, the administration of Tim Walz effectively endorsed this fraud. This is from the New York Times, a paper that obviously is not in the business of hitting Democrats most of the time. But in this case, the allegations are so devastating and so obviously true that they have no choice. They want to eliminate Tim Walz politically because he's become a liability. So here's what they reported. This again is from the New York Times. Over the last 5 years, law enforcement officials say fraud took root in pockets of Minnesota's Somali diaspora as scores of individuals made small fortunes by setting up companies that billed state agencies for millions of dollars worth of social services that were never provided. Federal prosecutors say that 59 people have been convicted in those schemes so far, and that more than $1 billion in taxpayers' money has been stolen in 3 plots that they are investigating. That is more than Minnesota spends annually to run its Department of Corrections. Yes, that's more than $1 billion in taxpayer money scammed by Somalis who shouldn't be here in the first place. And the link to Walz is clear. Continuing with the article, quote, in one case, hundreds of providers were reimbursed for assistance they claimed to have provided to people at risk for homelessness though federal authorities said services were not provided. The program's annual cost ballooned to more than $104 million last year, the authority said, from a budgeted projection of $2.6 million when it began in 2020. In another program aimed to provide therapy for autistic children, prosecutors said that providers recruited children in Minneapolis' Somali community, falsely certifying them as qualifying for autism treatment and paying their parents kickbacks for their cooperation. Prosecutors have so far charged one provider, Asha Farhan Hassan, 29, with wire fraud. Ryan Pakyaga, who also has represented other defendants in the fraud cases, said that some involved became convinced that state agencies were tolerating, if not tacitly allowing, the fraud. No one was doing anything about the red flags, he said. It was like someone was stealing money from the cookie jar and they kept refilling it. Yes, just one autism treatment provider has been charged with, in quotes, of course, has been charged with wire fraud after hundreds of millions of dollars were stolen from the program. Just one. That's why Somalis are so brazen about committing these crimes. They know that, in all likelihood, they won't get caught. The feds will catch maybe 1 or 2 people, while tens of thousands of fraudsters get away with it. You ever feel too busy to make healthy choices? Do you find yourself too tired at the end of the day to cook a healthy meal and find yourself frequenting your favorite drive-thru more than you would like? Well, you're not alone. Life can make it hard to make healthy choices sometimes, but there's one option that even the busiest person can make time for, and that's Balance of Nature. Balance of Nature's fruits and veggie supplements make it easy to eat the fruits and veggies that you're supposed to eat on a daily basis. You can take them however you like, swallow them with water, chew them, or open the capsules and mix the powder into your meals or drinks. Inside, you'll find ingredients from 16 whole fruits and 15 whole vegetables that are freeze-dried and lab-tested with no binders, no fillers, no flow agents, just 100% whole food ingredients. Plus, they're launching a fantastic new product. Balance of Nature's freeze-dried snacks are 100% real fruit, bananas, mangoes, pineapple, strawberries, freeze-dried to lock in flavor and give that perfect crunch. Go to balanceofnature.com, get a free variety snack pack, plus a free preferred customer membership with your first set of Balance of Nature supplements. Go to balanceofnature.com to claim this limited time offer before it ends on Cyber Monday. Now, if you were watching the Sunday shows over the weekend, you probably saw how on various shows the suggestion was made that not all Somalis are like this. Tim Walsh, for example, said something along the lines of, it's wrong to blame an entire community for the actions of a few. That was the gist of what he said. But actually, in this case, it's completely appropriate to blame the entire Somali community for what's happening in places like Minnesota. Yeah, we can blame all of them. They're committing a massive fraud. We're talking about, again, well over $1 billion in just a few years in one state. And this is unlike any other foreign fraud in American history. It's a fraud that is only possible with the support of a very large number of people. It's a fraud that's consistent with how Somalis destroyed their own country. It's a fraud that's being committed by the same Somali community that just a few months ago rallied in support of a Somali degenerate who sexually assaulted a child. As you remember, they sent letters to the judge defending the child predator. In fact, the Somali community also threatened the mother of the victim after she cooperated with authorities. So that's the Somali community that we are told by Tim Walsh only has one or two bad apples. Well, actually, no. Okay, the reality is that the vast majority of Somalis and Afghans in this country simply don't have the IQ or the culture or, frankly, the morals to be good apples. And until we're capable of recognizing that, and until we begin removing these people from our country, whether they're citizens or not, they will continue to rob us, assault us, and murder us in the streets. That behavior is inconsistent with civilization. It's also, in many cases, inconsistent with the claims they made when they first entered this country to obtain citizenship. And for that reason, there's only one viable solution.
Walsh ends by going nuclear, claiming Somali and Afghan communities are incapable of functioning in America. That's not criticism. That's collective guilt. It's the argumentative equivalent of carpet bombing. No distinctions, no nuance, no survivors. This is where the mask fully drops. Walsh isn't discussing immigration reform. He's pushing a culture cleansing argument dressed up as patriotism. He frames mass deportation as a moral duty and paints disagreement as weakness. It's powerful framing, but dangerously manipulative.
The Trump administration must begin the largest denaturalization campaign in the history of this country. Look through their social media feeds, identify everybody involved in these fraudulent charities and nonprofits, collect a very large list of names of foreigners who openly despise this country and feel no loyalty to it. And then, lawfully and properly, get rid of every single one of them.
This clip is a masterclass in emotional escalation. Start with horror, assign collective blame, present Trump as an avenging solution, demonize dissent, call for unprecedented state power. The arguments are intense, biased, and deliberately inflammatory. The selective examples and sweeping generalizations aren't accidental. They're the entire strategy. If this retort catches fire, denaturalization won't be a fringe idea. It will be a political power. Thank you for watching and listening to our video. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We'll talk with you the next time we need to uncover the real truth.